Welcome to the Foundation Podcast. We're the Lorehounds, your guides to psycho history. I'm David.
I'm John, and this is our coverage of the Apple TV Plus original series Foundation.
In this podcast, we're going to do a scene-by-scene breakdown of Season 2, Episode 8, The Last Empress. Oh my God, I can't believe we're only 2 away from the finish.
Crazy times here. Be sure to stick around to the end of the podcast for programming notes about our podcasting schedule for August and early September. A reminder that you can find all of our podcasts on Spotify and YouTube now, as well as all the major podcast platforms.
Speaking of podcasting platforms, if you are indeed enjoying what we do, maybe we'd like to ask you to take a moment to leave us a rating or a review. Apple Podcasts is a place to do it. You know, it's the big SEO engine, and the more reviews that we have up there, the more people can find us, even in the outer reach, far, far away.
For ad-free episodes, early access, and exclusive content, visit patreon.com/thelorehounds. You can subscribe and support us for as little as $3 a month, or we actually already started free trials, and I saw a couple of people taking advantage of that. So you can get a 7-day free trial right now by heading to that site.
Yeah, that's a cool little feature that they added.
Yeah.
Lastly, we love to get feedback, and we love to talk about your feedback. If you've got some theories, if you've got things that we've missed or other fun details, drop us an email.
Send emails to empire@thelorehounds.com or head to our website and either use the voicemail feature or the contact form. You can also post a message in our Discord server, and we can include those as well. You can find all those links in the show notes.
Yeah, Discord's been hot lately. Well, mostly because of we've got 2 other big shows flying right now, so it's a little bit crazy time. John, we had a very special opportunity. Do you?
I don't go by John anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I go by he who talks to David Goyer.
Well played, sir. Well played. Are you floating around in your podcast studio right now?
I am.
In zero-G style.
We had such a good conversation with him. If you don't know, David S. Goyer, who has worked on a ton of things, like the Dark Knight trilogy, like huge projects, he is the showrunner of Foundation. And he agreed to sit down with us and talk to us for an hour about the show and his process. And it was a really great conversation.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to, peer behind the curtain, so to speak, and get into some of those details, like actually how do they make the show, or what goes into his thinking around casting, or other questions. How do you adapt a huge work like this? And it was just great. He's such a science fiction and comic book nerd. I feel like if he wasn't a successful showrunner, he'd be hanging out with us on the Discord. Breaking down shows and, talking shop.
Yeah, maybe he is anonymously. We'll never know.
We will never know. When can folks get that interview, John?
Yeah, that'll be up probably around Sunday for the public feed.
Okay.
We will post it there. Patrons will get it a little early. And I had a great time with him. He's a super nice guy. I'm glad that he sat down with us because I understand this show better just for having spoken to him. He talked a lot about the themes of the show, how he pulled those core ideas out of Asimov, how he brought in his own life. He talked about his own life experiences that affected the show. So yeah, really great stuff.
It's so cool too when production folks like that, especially at a high level, for them to be able to come and talk to fandom in a real casual manner. It really has heightened the enjoyment of the show for me, just to be able to have that kind of interaction. So I think we're pretty lucky that we get to, I know he makes the rounds to, other places as well. So it's not like it's super exclusive, but just in terms of quality of show and enjoyment and fandom, it's just cool that folks get to have that kind of more intimate connection. Whereas usually production people are very far and remote. We never see, we don't really hear, unless it's like Hollywood media stuff. And we're not that. So It's very cool.
Yep. It was great.
Cool.
But we're here to talk about the episode today.
Episode 8. What'd you think?
It was like mind-boggling in a good way. In a good way.
Right, good.
Every time I think I know where the show is going, it's like, no, we are going left turn. And from our conversation with David Goyer, it's going to keep doing that. I don't think that we are done with the
We're-
roller coaster here.
No, we're not in a safe space.
No,
we're going to be
no.
challenged continually.
Yeah. It's funny because a lot of the questions we asked, he said, just wait till the end of the season. You know, I do think he's going to tie it up really nicely, which I really like that.
Yeah.
Beautiful visuals of everything. The attack on Trantor was excellently done. Just the whole thing felt chaotic and felt scary to be in. Becky, pour one out, right?
Oh man, I am so sad. I was so hoping that we were going to get to see a little bit more action with her. So
yeah, it was
she's expensive
lot,
though.
yes, I'm sure. It was a lot more sexual than I thought it would be this episode.
Oh really?
I think that's the most sex scenes we've ever gotten in Foundation.
Is it? I mean,
one
we
episode.
Dusk and Rue, and we had, I mean, Sereth and Day did not copulate in that famous scene. They were rolling around a bit, but it's only one scene, right?
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Did it catch you short a little bit?
It was fine. It was fine.
Okay.
I didn't need it. I didn't need the constant hover scene, but it was fine. It didn't bother me.
Or maybe just see them kiss and then cut away and then be done with it. Kind of. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It was fine. How about you? What were your thoughts on it?
It looks like I won some internet points this episode, so I'm very happy to claim my winnings.
Do you hear that? I hear a beeping in your background. It must be that dump truck coming to dump your
That's
internet
right.
points.
It's pulling into my driveway as we speak. I just hope they don't bury my actual car. There's so many of them. It's going to be a pain. I'm going to have to get my snowblower out to move them around. I think we decided on one of our other, maybe it was the Ahsoka podcast that we just recorded for Ahsoka 3, that our internet points are good. They're redeemable for cereal.
Okay.
Right? I think that's what our, boxes.
So you win
cereal.
internet points and you can stomach less well-developed shows.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, okay. I think that's the way it works.
All right, I think that's right.
Or you can
Your
just take a bath.
Satisfaction in Foundation will carry you through a couple bad episodes of something else.
That works. I thought that, like you, I just feel like I'm in the tumble dry cycle of the dryer, right? I'm just getting bounced around, but in a good way. I'm being surprised and delighted. I love how all the little mysteries that they're setting up they're paying off rather quickly. So we're not stuck with a Lost scenario or a Twin Peaks scenario, but we've got a little tension built up between, maybe a couple of episodes, and then boom, we get an answer. And that's just a really nice pacing. And the pacing feels like it's ramping up so that when the end comes, it's going to feel earned and we're going to be left bereft and wanting season 3. And, so that's all really good television making. Yeah. So much going on in this show too about faith and religion, and politics and power. I love the deeper depths of this show. It's nice to have the Becky running around chomping on people, but at the same time you can stop and think and I wonder what about this about politics and religion. So
right, or just seeing how Small Day gets in there, right? There's character moments within the violence. There's violence needs to have a reason, good point. Right? And it had a lot of reasons here, not just a plot driven reason of let's get Constant out, but also let's give Day a new motivation to do something different than he would have done about Foundation.
Interesting. Yeah. Cause he's been challenged twice now, with his life at the very beginning and then this episode. So he's probably faced his mortality than 99% of the other Cleons.
Yeah.
Right. And
I think that's right. Yeah.
He's a very different.
Well, I would say that Cleon, I think 18. Who's the one who got beheaded by Demerzel? I think he might win it.
Yeah.
He might win the mortality cake.
Well, the mortality cake, but in terms of he had a pretty traumatic experience there, running around in the city and things like that. Yeah, so that's a good point. But still, I think. Well, let's apply the violence as the last refuge of the incompetent, right? Of the incompetent. you could apply that to television making or film making in the sense that you can use big flashy explosions to wow your audience, but at the end of the day, it's empty calories. It's like eating cotton candy. There's no
Right.
substance to it. Whereas with a scene like this, we've got substance. We've got dramatic stakes. We've got characters putting themselves on the line, and we feel it because there's something important to it. It's not gratuitous for
Right.
it's for its own sake. So
Yes.
the one thing
Agreed.
about this episode is that the scenes get really messy towards the end. Not messy in a bad way, but there's a lot of cross editing and we're jumping around between storylines.
Right.
So
Right.
when I did the outline, I had to compact some of the storylines because it was just too
That makes
impossible
sense.
to follow the timeline of the show. So
Yeah.
just a pre-warning about that. But otherwise, I think we can start to get into some of the content for today.
Cool.
In terms of background for the series, I had laid out early on in the series that, we were going to talk a little bit about Asimov himself, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the Foundation books themselves. And thankfully, our in-house research librarian and most favorite Tolkien research scholar, who is actually at the Oxenmoot right now, hopefully having a great time. Hi, Marilyn. Hope you're having fun.
She's mooting.
She is mooting. She did some preliminary research for me, which really helped. And so last episode for 7, we talked about Asimov. And this time around, I've got some information about the books themselves and sort of the context around how they were written. So there are actually 7 books in total. The 3 core books were written between 1951, were published as books in the way they are now as we get them between 1951 and 1953.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Foundation and Empire, and then Second Foundation. And then they got him, the publishers were like, hey, can you, revive this series a little bit? So he wrote 2 sequels, Foundation's Edge in 1982 and Foundation and Earth in 1986. And then he went back and he wrote some prequels to line some things up a little bit more. So Prelude to Foundation and Forward to the Foundation in 1988 and 1993. There is a really great, I'll reference this later, but there's a ton of information on the internet. So if you want to just go on the Wikipedia or whatever, all of this sort of is laid out to try to keep track of which books in what order. These are probably his most famous, what he's most famous for are these books in some ways. He apparently conceived and wrote these while he was working at the Philadelphia Naval Yards as a civilian chemist during World War II. And apparently he had sort of a flash of inspiration as he was walking to go meet his publisher one day.
Oh, that's
and cool. And it was just sort of like it came to him and then he went from there. And remember when we talked about Asimov himself, he was a prolific writer. He's got like over 500, books and short stories and
insane.
Probably tons of other writings for articles and newspapers and, popular stuff. So he was nonstop word machine. He's also known for, some of the other books that he's really famous for are this Galactic Empire series and the I, Robot series. And then later he worked to link all those together and he used a particular character, a robotic character, Daniel Oliva, as one character that he used to thread together multiple plot stuff. Now, I haven't read all that stuff, so I can't speak to the accuracy of when and where Oliva shows up, but apparently that's one of the connectors he used, some interstitial tissue to connect multiple things. So, interesting factoid, in 1966, the original Foundation trilogy won the Hugo Award, which is a big science fiction writing award, for Best All-Time Series. And guess who he beat out? Lord of the Rings.
Oh, my God. I'm not sure I'm with the critics there.
Right, yeah. So it's pretty funny. And apparently Asimov is quoted as saying that he's, very much an admirer of Tolkien, and there was a lot of appreciation from Asimov towards Tolkien. In one of his sub-series, he's got multiple little series. There's a series called The Black Widowers, And there's one particular story, Nothing Like Murder, which is a big homage to Lord of the Rings, and it factors in some plot points and stuff like that. Although Nothing Like Murder is not generally well reviewed. It's one of his better works. So a lot of people say that you can really feel him trying to fit in the Lord of the Rings stuff. So
trying to make himself something he's not.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and apparently there's some quote floating around about Tolkien saying how he admired Asimov as well, but Marilyn noted that that's probably unfounded. So, but it just is one of those echoes that keeps repeating across the internets. So, it'd be nice to think that, but I don't know the veracity of it. The focus overall, the themes or the trends, not the trends, but the main stuff that it's dealing with, Foundation is dealing with, is looking at the trends through which civilizations might pass using history as a precedent. So, this wider scope of societal evolution, adaptation, time, and he wasn't looking at specific cultural specifics like, this particular culture built this kind of architecture or this kind of style or this kind of music came out of it, right? He's not looking at cultural snapshots in time, but at this really huge scale of society evolving and adapting across time and space. And what does that look like? And then looking at history as, precedent, and how can we take what we see in the past and go, okay, that's an interesting reflex, or that's an interesting tendency. What would that look like on a galactic empire scale?
Interesting. That's what the show is too.
Yes,
we see that all the time. That's Harry Seldon in a nutshell. But it's a cool theme to explore, and I'm wondering why no one's done it since. It's a broad enough theme where I don't think it would be intellectual property.
Right.
And I'm wondering why people. I guess the Wheel of Time kind of does this too, but yeah.
I think we touched on this in the Goyer interview. Nobody from Foundation forward, even if you're an author and you never read Foundation, and it's the same with, I think, Tolkien for fantasy in some way, you can't escape the influence. It's embedded into our understanding of the space, and so he set a baseline for what we think of as galactic spanning empires and humanity out in the stars. And whether you're whether you're using that intentionally or reacting against it and not using it, it's still there, right? It's still part of our thing. And, a lot of this, and this has been often quoted, that Asimov was inspired by Edward Gibbon's History of the Decline and Fall of Roman Empire, right, in sort of modeling that historical structure. And he was setting out to document, what would it look like for a galactic empire to falter? And then what kinds of things? And you sort of using that as that inflection point as a interesting thought experiment in a way. So there's a link here, John, we can put into the show notes, and it's a very old website. It looks very Internet 1.0. And this gentleman named John Jenkins, who I couldn't find much information out about, but he just seemed like an Asimov fan and was probably a listserv moderator and prolific writer. He wrote this, basically reviews of every single piece of Asimov, every short story, book, whatnot. And it's called The Spoiler-Laden Guide to Isaac Asimov. And it's a really great resource. And, if you're interested in diving more into Asimov's writings, go check that out. But he wrote, this is an observation that he is quoted as saying, this John Jenkins guy, it has been pointed out that most science fiction writers since the 1950s have been affected by Asimov, either modeling their style or on his, or deliberately avoiding anything like his style. So,
yikes.
Yeah, we talk about the dryness of Asimov stuff. Who, and he was actively in his probably the 2/3 of his career, he actively avoided using sex, sexuality, human sexual relationships, violence, and big splashy stuff. He assiduously avoided that, and then later on, he started to incorporate it a little bit more. And so, this quote is either people are using that or I don't want to be anything like that. I'm going to go the opposite way. So
Right.
kind of a funny thing. And, relative to the quote that we listed last time about Asimov and his own reflection of his, work, he said, I'm going to be this sort of dry bones dude. And
It's interesting to me because you have Tolkien, who also does not write sex at all, right?
Mhm.
He actively ignores that. And yet his relationships feel fully formed. And Asimov, I think, for the first part of his career, did not nail that relationship part.
Mhm.
People, I think even Goyer was saying the characters were a little bit two dimensional in the original Foundation books.
Right.
And it was more about the ideas than it was the characters. And so that's something that I'm really glad they fixed for the show. They have improved that for the medium.
Really interesting, too, the choices that they made to embody these tendencies about human history and these big ideas, to embody them in like the Cleonic dynasty, like really creative choices. And I think that's some of the, for me watching this show, that's one of the things that I'm really enjoying, is how they've made these choices.
Right. Well, cool. I think it's time to get to the episode, but we do have our reminders. We
get some open question things too.
Yeah, the open questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I think one of your open questions was closed by David Goyer.
Do you want to hit me with that? You want to hit us with that? You can make fun of me.
I almost want to save it for the interview.
Okay.
But let's just say Markley's not going to happen.
No. Yeah, check out the interview because Goyer has a funny, says something.
We had a good laugh with him. Yeah, he poked fun.
All right, so we're still considering who tinkered with Day's aura, and what about the blind angels? We don't know. We still haven't. That's one mystery that has not been paid off. We've got no new evidence on it, observable evidence. I mean, maybe there's some embedded stuff, but I'm not seeing anything about those. We still got an open question about the Prime Radiant. Is it actually sentient inside, or what is the sentience inside that spoke to Harry? We've got a lot more about superpositioning and how Harry knows what he knows in the vault. Dr. Selden, I should say. We can call Dr. Selden maybe the guy in the vault, and Harry the guy who's no longer outside the vault, I guess. We don't know anything about Kale and how Harry was made real, so that's another big mystery. I'm going down the list here, and here's the scars on the face of Markley. Who is he, and what does he want? Well,
He wants you to forget about him. That's what he wants.
Josiah, is he more of a bit part, or he's the mule to be? I'm not thinking that he's going to be the mule. I don't
think it makes total sense if he's the mule.
So, and then this question of Salvor and Harry, are they really dead? Well, we now know that Salvor is not really dead. So that's partially answered. And then one last little callback before we jump into the production notes and into the episode proper. Atomic ashtray. So Foundation gave Empire an atomic ashtray. That's a thing in the books. And so they deliberately pulled that up as a funny to place into
that's funny
this show. Because early on Asimov, when he was writing this, was it's like, atomic everything, atomic clocks, atomic dishwashers, you're right, atomics were going to power everything. And so the fact that they actually had an atomic ashtray in the original books and that they gave it to him in this was pretty funny, I think.
Yeah, that is fun because it's something where I think the world thinks about something like an atomic ashtray the same way Day does in his reaction.
He's like, what the WTF? All right.
Well, let's give some production notes before we head into our break and then the episode breakdown. So the production notes are: you read the books a long time ago, never finished them, and you haven't read a lot of other Asimov, although now you've done your research on Asimov, or at least relied on Maryland's.
Yes. I feel like I should do some more reading in the off season, but who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. Now I'm really intrigued by this world a lot more. Yeah. I finished the first book. I didn't go any further. Now after talking to Goyer, actually, I really want to go further because he made me more interested in what the books have to say.
Cool.
We do have screeners. We're not running ahead, so we have not seen episodes 9 and 10 yet. So sometimes feedback might be a little bit delayed because the episode will have aired later than we recorded. You are listening to the official podcast and some other podcasts, but after we have podcasted. So probably on the next episode, you'll bring in takes from this episode's podcasts.
Yeah, if there's anything of particular note to bring forward. But yeah.
Right.
We want your takes fresh from our kitchen. So
hot takes on your hot cakes. All right, David, it's time to take a break. And we're back. David, can you lead us into the scene-by-scene breakdown?
Absolutely. And just a reminder, as we get towards the end of the episode, things get a little messy. So I'll call it out when I've combined scenes. So we start with Rue snooping around Demerzel's room, and she's discovered by Dusk. She reveals that she has her memories, and Dusk can't seem to get past a gap in his memories about Demerzel. They notice some inactive chroma on one of the murals in the mural hall, but then they're called away for the executions of the drunk and the monk. John, this whole time I thought we trusted one another, but apparently you just thought I trusted you. That's
exactly.
Such a good line.
That was good, turning on its head about him. The dialogue is just much better this season, and it's been really great.
It's fire.
And it keeps getting better. So it's getting really Game of Thronesy in these duel of words kinds of conversations.
And, just to harp on the strike thing a little bit, it's, this is not chat GPT style writing. This is, people who've thought about it and agonized over these words. What does it mean to the characters?
Right.
And when a line is spoken that has that kind of truth to it, it rings, it sings out. And I just really appreciate the writers for their craft. And when they are working in a room that's supportive and has a vision and everybody's working at their best levels, a quality show is unparalleled, right? You can just tell, right? Quality knows quality kind of thing.
Yeah. Game knows game.
Yes, that's the word.
Indeed.
That's what the kids say.
I really, really loved this whole refrain where he's stuck in this loop that seems to be shutting down his memories. Mm-hmm. Again, this show takes itself in directions that I don't expect, and it takes me there faster than I thought it would. Mm-hmm. Because I thought this was going to be a multi-season arc of what's going on with the Cleons and their memories and their cataphils. Mm-hmm. But now I have Dusk just figuring out what's going on with him right away, and you have Rue showing her hand and saying, "We have figured out how to solve this. Let me help you."
I was surprised when Rue, it was like she kind of effed up a little bit. She's like, oh crap. And then she like instantly turned him into his ally. I don't feel like she went in knowing that she was going to tell him that.
No.
And as it kind of in an intimate conversation, and whether she actually has feelings for him or she's ultimately manipulating him and still has feelings for him. That she was able to take that screw up and turn it to a big strategic advantage. So cool. I love Rue as a character. I really will be sad if we don't see her in future seasons, but that's the way the show goes.
She's very politically savvy, and I really enjoyed how she sort of used this insecurity of Cleon, of this Dusk, of I don't remember, I can't figure out why my memory is blocked at this point. And she says, well, I can fix that for you. She makes herself his savior in that moment. Yeah. And makes it so even if he doesn't trust her, he has to go to her and he has to go along with whatever she's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Have you ever had an experience with somebody who's had a head injury or even temporary or long-term?
I mean, I've dealt with dementia in my family.
Okay, so so it's a really weird thing. I had a roommate of mine who got hit on the head, and he kept repeating like all day until his brain sort of rebooted itself. What time is it? What day it is? We ended up buying him a newspaper so he could look, because he just kept asking the same questions over and over again, and it was just the weirdest experience because we were kids. We didn't know what was going on, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, it is just a creepy thing when you see another being locked in a loop like that.
Yeah. Well, I hope he went to the hospital because that's
He
what he
did. Well,
needed.
yeah, he came home from the hospital and we just started to babysit him for, a day. And then the next day he
Gotcha.
was fine. So,
Oh, that's good.
yeah.
Good to hear.
Terrence Mann, oh boy, what a performance to do that, to play
I
with
think you
that
left
line.
out a middle word, Terrence the Man.
Terrence, just incredible. Yeah, so good, and so interesting too that to think that the Cleons could be programmed in some way like Demerzel is in some ways.
They do seem to have figured out human memory, unless everyone's a robot. Maybe everybody's a robot and we just don't know. I don't know.
Maybe they won. More little technology that they're introducing. So we have the Shadow Master silencer. And I guess it's some sort of, it's not a visual cloak. It's like an auditory cloak. And so when Rue is walking around in Demerzel's room, there's part of the scene where she plucks a string on a harp.
Yep.
And the audio, it just goes boo, right? We don't hear a high sharp note of that. So really great way to signal how the technology is working. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
And a couple of things in Demerzel's room. There is her old dress from last season hanging on one of those little, mannequin things, that like one that had the little frill on the top, instead of this armor piece that she has now.
Right. What do you like better? You like the armor piece?
I don't think it's a question of what I like better. It's what's fitting the storyline, and in this storyline, the armor, it's harder. It's signaling more of a there's violence happening, beautiful violence, like a velvet fist.
She felt more servient last season, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah,
and now she is in charge. Like she is clearly the mama of these Cleons.
She is the last Empress.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Title. So David Goyer also answered a question about how many Cleons have, let's say, bedded Demerzel. Right. His answer surprised me. So let's save that for the interview.
Okay. Tease. So anyway, we see the old dress. We see the flower from season 1, right? That Day modeled his vision of when he saw the triple goddesses on there. And then the harp. And I guess I have no idea what the harp relates to. Is just a cool thing that they found, or if that's, just part of her past, but it was cool. And then obviously we have the toolbox with the solar system on it, and we linger on that for quite a while. And that solar system map matches the map on the mural wall, which then has won me a whole ton of internet points. So
there you go.
Yeah. Then we got this great dissolve into the mural hall in the second part of this scene where they see the inactive chroma.
Mm-hmm.
And, Dusk talks a lot about the robot wars, and he's sort of interpreting the mural in this really ornate sort of overacted way, which is really great for his character because that's sort of the vibe of his character.
Right. I really like when they make art part of the analysis of a character because, you see that with Sabine in Star Wars, and I think it's the same with Dusk here. And they've been telling us since season 1 that the Dusks, like their whole life is just the art now. They don't have anything left other than the art because I guess they get put in charge if Day is away, but that doesn't happen in this episode.
No, yeah, he quite pointedly so too, right? He gets kind of backhanded, and
I love how Dusk is really like put on the back burner here. When Day is literally, Dawn is literally the one who's trying to sleep with Day's wife.
Right. Yeah. I'll take care of her while you're away. No problem. Yeah.
No big deal, guys. No big deal. I got her.
So we get this reference to the first law of robotics being circumvented, which is a fascinating thing. So they're playing with that. And this idea that the robots rose up because they just wanted the one thing, that any sentient life it wants, which is to be recognized for their personhood.
Right.
And
agency.
So We talk about droidism in Star Wars. What if the droids ever rose up in Star Wars? It would not be a pretty scene. And I think that's what they are inferring in this, is that when the robots rose up, it was a brutal war.
Not a great time. I mean, C-3PO really led them to victory.
Chopper, their chief war criminal.
Well, Chopper would probably be the general there.
Right.
I could see that.
Head of special forces. And then just the last note for me is the green on the mural that was inactive, that the Dusk, the old master, as they say, that was the same green as from episode 5 this season, when Dawn and Dusk are down in the memoriam and they're talking about stuff. They looked at Emperor Algrin, a mural of him, and they talk about the graven stripe, the betrayer, the traitor, and that's what that color green signifies. Well, it looked like on this, that was also that same green, so yeah.
Interesting. I like it.
And then we just got to talk about the fact that, this solar system is the Earth solar system, and then that figure that's underneath it is a robot, and it's all part of the mural of the robot wars themselves. So good stuff.
Absolutely.
All right. On Ignis, Tellum takes a moment and then is confronted by Gale, who learns that Tellum has killed. Well, Tellum confesses that she killed Harry. And then we learn the truth about the reality of Salvor and Gale's situation. Josiah sees the truth of Tellum's condition and then runs away. John, please, no more Babe in the Woods from you. I love Rachel House.
She's really great. This whole, Hannibal Lecter situation.
Oh my Lord, right?
Pretty spooky. Especially when she can get into your mind, but you can't get into her mind, right? Like she could just create whatever reality. She could put you in hell if she wants to. There's no one who's ever been at a more vulnerable situation than these people are right now.
It's really wild to the depth of which the fantasy runs. It's not just masking somebody, but like your physical reality is altered. You cannot trust your senses. You cannot trust your memory. That's an interesting thing that we talk a lot about in the show too, is memory. And so what is where am I now? Where was I before? And, helps me predict where I'm going to go, which hasn't happened yet. But if you can't trust your memory and your immediate physical surroundings are not reality, that has got to be a terrifying sensation.
Well, my question is, why doesn't she just have one of the members of these Mentalics next to them all the time to give them a different reality and make them think that they're not in captivity? Or maybe it's that Tellum is the only one powerful enough to do it, since she has. Now we know that she has the powers of many.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like too, from what I remember, just picking up from other stuff in the episode. There was a line about strength in harmony, that they're stronger together and with their together. So I think she's, the community at large is helping maybe maintain the illusion for them around them. So
I mean, I think that it's a greater good thing, right? That's what they're thinking. Oh, that's another movie I got to put on our twist movie list. Anyway, I'm thinking out loud about Second Breakfast, everyone.
All right. I'm getting hungry.
Yeah. I think that Tellum is probably orders of magnitude more powerful than everyone. And they see her as basically their Mentalic messiah. They see her as, it's almost like the way that Targaryens were viewed in Game of Thrones, as above the religion, even above the rules of the religion. They were allowed to marry their brothers and sisters. Nobody else was. It's this kind of putting someone on a pedestal to the point where you have a bad player come around on that pedestal and you are having a problem.
Right. And I love this idea too of bad guys who seem reasonable, or they have an understandable logic. Like, I can understand where Tellum is coming from. She wants to protect her people, but then that's turned into this monstrosity, and she's using her godhood to cannibalize and violate people. I mean, here's an interesting thing. We had Harry masking as Constant, right? And Day even comments, oh, well, there's a nice violation. And here we have Tellum violating people by stealing their bodies,
She's violating people all over the place.
all over the place. So it's a really interesting. But yeah, she's such a compelling bad guy, and I love, bad guys who have a reasonable starting position, even though their methodologies are often monstrous.
Yeah, absolutely.
A last little thing on this too, these little dishes with their psychic pitches, that everyone has, there's this cosmic song, right? I've got my little thing and you've got your little, and then when we're together, when we're in harmony, we can do things. And it just really made me think of Arugula's song. Sorry. Why am I blanking the name of the creator?
The Ainur. Yep.
Yes, the music of the Ainur. Thank you. Just this idea that harmonics and melody and music, and when they're dissonant chords or resonant chords are coming together, and
right. Well, as a trained audio engineer back in the day, that is a thing with sound, right? You have a phase of the pitch, which is when you look at the waveform, whether it's up or down.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an exactly out of phase wave playing at the same time, it will be nothing. That's just how phase works in sound. That's a real thing.
Right.
So this idea of, okay, there's a physical pitch to your mental signal,
and
we're going to play something 100% out of phase so that it becomes nothing. If you have it's the same pitch at the same volume in the same phase, then it's just going to be nothing.
Wow, that's cool. It makes me think of a piece of feedback that we got for our Ahsoka podcast and what's going on in Ahsoka about like potential nullification of the Force, like creating these bubbles.
Yeah,
where whatever is inside the bubble doesn't exist or doesn't have agency or power beyond that bubble. So
it's cool stuff.
On Terminus, people gather to witness the broad beam of the execution. Constance's two dads drink to fortify their nerves, and we fade through the broad beam to Trantor itself, where we see a small host gathered at the palace for the execution. Bell, Glaywin, and the rest of the fleet are also watching. Day introduces us to the collar of Typhon, and Demerzel notices something wrong just before what's his name? Hober jumps in.
Yeah. Demerzel is the MVP saving the Klingons over here, I gotta say.
Yeah. I loved her laying on top of him. It was such an awkward thing. He's like, "Get off me."
Right. Right.
She was, yeah, it was just a funny visual. It was great.
And not only that, but we get the portable guillotine, which is really fun. I what a fun idea of beheading people, right? You get it's cute. It's a little ring, and you just put it over their neck. You're all done. It's clean.
Yeah. So we've gotten two interesting execution methods here. We had Titan's prick earlier on, and now we've got the collar of Typhon. Did you catch that little cutaway where they had people burning books on Siwenna?
No, I did not. That must have been very quick.
Yeah, it was that at the patrician's house, all of that sort of mob scene, and they were taking, as they had the broad beam floating there, and they were cleaning out the patrician's house and bringing books to burn on a pyre. So to me, it kind of signals a descent into barbarism on the outskirts of the in the outer reaches.
But are they doing that in protest of Empire or Foundation? I guess is the question.
I think they're just doing it in both. Maybe they're just like, F y'all, we're Siwenna. We're going to, Foundation is proved to be, charlatans, and Empire isn't here. So, we're just going to get rid of anything that is not related to our immediate life and survival. So.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Other things in this scene, Polly apologizing to Constant was really heartbreaking.
Yeah, yeah.
And where is Harry? He's not going to come out and be like, yeah, I'm the one getting executed.
Oh, I think he's gone. I think they zapped him when they...
Okay, he is gone. Okay.
Yeah, he's gone.
Okay.
So it was interesting to see all the people that were assembled in front, the different ranks, in the scene. And I'm just curious if that was supposed to be, because they're all wearing different robes and different
Mm-hmm.
colors and different sort of styles. And I'm wondering if that's sort of some sort of proportional representation in the Empire. Like, okay, we've got 500 people here, and 30% of them are triple goddess, and 20% are this religion over here, and 15% are that, philosophy over there, or what. But it was a nice, this idea that, empires gathering representatives to witness this. And again, using violence as a sociological control, right? Reminding folks that if you step out of line, this is what happens.
Well, I would be pretty scared of the guillotine ring too.
Yeah. And boy, just Lee Pace is a god in this scene. His acting in this season has just been
really
extraordinary.
Great, yeah.
So
he puts on all these different faces when, not just when he's different Cleons, which I think is another great thing he does, but also just one Cleon in different settings. He does a great job of playing the variations of what does a Cleon addressing the crowd look like in this era.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to in the bedroom being awkward with Sareth. Oh, my toe, which again, one of the funniest lines of the season.
And then the close-ups as Constant is repeating her prayer, guide me through the darkness. And then we get all the close-ups of her family and various people. It just a really moving scene, so that when Hober does pop in and Demerzel's like, she can, her cat hairs start to tingle. It's a real blow, right? It's a real energetic blow to us as the viewers. It's really well paced and structured. So
definitely.
All right. Just before Constance is executed, Hober jumps in with the Spirit Rising right next to the palace. In the chaos, Hober evades fire, rescues Constant. Day rescues Sareth, and Dusk rescues Rue. We lose another beloved character, Becky, and on the Spirit Rising, Hober gets the collar off and they jump away. Bell and Glaywin then reflect on the situation.
Was it Dawn who rescued Sareth?
I'm sorry, did I probably
you said
got
Day,
that.
But yeah, I just wanted to double check.
Sometimes my brain,
I know the Day and Dawn do bleed together.
Yeah, and just trying to remember, this is one person.
Let's just be honest who he is.
The Trinity, right? We've got a Trinity here, so it's very, very nice.
Right. Everyone's taking who they care about, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I thought that was some nice things. You liked this scene overall?
I did. I thought it was a fun. There was a lot of funny stuff going on here, but also it felt like real stakes. It felt like I thought that this Day could have died here, and that would have been a reasonable outcome of this, and would have changed the stakes of this show. But it also made sense that he didn't die. I really do think, especially watching Demerzel save Day, you realize how much of a hold she has on him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Even though he's going to do what he's going to do.
Right. He's going to make out with Sareth.
Do you think that this is chipping away at Bell's resolve for his dharma, for his ability, his like,
good question,
sworn to Empire? Is this an erosion of his steadfastness?
I think it could go either way of radicalizing him, of maybe this is not going to work out and maybe I should be on the winning side here. Or he might go, well, these fuckers just attacked us. Let's go to Terminus and mess them up.
Which he's ultimately ordered to do.
Right. But as a general, you attack my capital, and that is an act of war. It's reasonable for me to go attack your capital now.
And Glaywin does say, look, Empire is vulnerable. Like, they can be touched.
Yeah.
And Foundation has that technology.
Oh, he's already a rebel. I don't know how. They must be watching them, and I don't know how he's not dead already.
Yeah, it is kind of perplexing in that regard. Where are the commissars? Where are the political officers? Where are the deepfake spies in the fleet keeping an eye on people's loyalties and stuff?
Unless Glaywin is set to test him.
Yeah, and I think that was something people had theorized earlier on is well, what happened during that long period of when Bell was mining Obelisk? And
he didn't freeze in time.
Yeah, no. So, and why didn't they work on him and turn him into a double agent? But anyway, we'll see what happens.
Right.
All right. In the palace throne room, Day announces that he's going to go to Terminus to talk to Foundation, which surprises everyone. When challenged by Dusk and Demerzel, Sereth backs him up. Day gives control of Trantor to Dawn and then implores him, Dawn, to keep Sereth safe. This was a real backhand to Dusk.
Yes, and you could see it on his face. He's like, "Oh, I am going to get you for this, man."
And I think it fuels his, I mean, Rue's already got her hooks into him, and they're already sort of. But I think it fuels his steals his resolve.
Right.
Like
I
F this
mean,
guy.
every step along this path that Day has led Dusk through only makes him feel more alone and more like he needs allies and more into the arms of Rue.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And he's being relegated to the dustbin of history anyway.
The dustbin.
Yeah.
Yes.
The dustbin. Did you see when Sereth stepped up, she gave Demerzel a little shoulder check as she brushes past her? I thought that was a brilliant little move.
I love it. She's great at the body language and the physical acting. Yeah. Good stuff.
One of my greatest moments in being a New Yorker was, coming from the West Coast, where we're all nice and stuff, was learning to shoulder check people in the subway and do a kind of sorry, not sorry when you stop to look at your phone at the top of the stairs. That's like totally inappropriate.
Not a good move. I haven't shoulder checked someone there because I'm scared, but I see.
Well, I learned. See, that's the thing. I've learned to do this little brush pass where I can look over my shoulder and go, sorry, not sorry, and move on. So, so I loved that, her little, sorry, Demerzel, this, you're out of sync here. You got to listen to what your lord and master is saying.
Mm-hmm.
So, question: is it cheating if they're not married?
Yes, because they're engaged. You shouldn't cheat on your fiance either.
No, you shouldn't. And this, I love this line that leaking blood and stars. Again, great writing and great words. Septum and scepter. Playing septum and scepter is another line that Sereth has, and here she says, leaking blood and stars. So it's literally, he's literally leaking blood in that scene. So
yeah, that was a cool metaphor, I guess.
Day's flagship is called the Rubicon. And for folks who might not be so familiar with Roman history, the Rubicon was a river in Italy, and during the Roman Empire, generals who were also governors, there was sort of this political difference we don't think of in the same way. But they were not allowed to bring their armies south of the Rubicon. Otherwise, it would be an act of war and treason. There's a whole process of disbanding your armies, and you could come into the city, but you just had to be a citizen. But in 49 BC, Gaius Julius Caesar, brought his armies south of the Rubicon, which sparked civil war. And then he ultimately declares himself emperor. Lots of history around that. But it was interesting that his flagship is called the Rubicon.
Well, especially, we have the expression today based on this, crossing the Rubicon, which is basically just, you're at the point of no return here.
Yeah.
You've crossed this threshold where you can't go back from.
So I guess if you see the Rubicon in orbit above your planet, you fucked up.
Yeah. And I think right now if they did an investigation, they might figure out that this was not an act of war, but a rescue mission.
Right.
If they go to Foundation and immediately attack, well, now it is a war. That is crossing the Rubicon.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's no pulling back from this now. Empire can't look weak when they say they're going to go to war and then don't go to war.
Right. So I really do like the choice of the ship name. I think it works.
As Day boards his shuttle, Sereth and Rue discuss the situation. They argue about who loves who, and Rue reminds Sereth to think of Cloud Dominion. Sereth reminds Rue who is in charge. Wife and widow are both called Empress.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Their spat here was really great. because it really set out the motivations. You even if you're not, you're going to be. It's this whole like you need to hear my lecture either way. And then this lashback of, well, you're in love with Dusk, and I don't agree with Rue that it doesn't matter. I think that does matter. They're still all Cleon. They still all have dinner together every night. It's going to be a problem if you have conflicting loyalties and motivations.
Yeah, dinners these days must be really awkward for the Cleons. So
which Dominion was in which bed tonight? What's
right?
They got to catch up on who's been with who.
Right. And it's been interesting to see Sareth master herself over this. She comes in really confident, and she's kind of not an iconoclast, but she's got a little chaotic edge to her, and she's trying to upset and challenge and push boundaries, which is a more common behavior among younger people trying to figure out their place in the world by pushing boundaries. And at the same time, she's playing a game that is huge. She's playing the ultimate game, and she's had trouble mastering herself in some circumstances. But when she says to Rue, "Hey, sister, I appreciate the frank talk here, but remember, I'm the queen, and you're my retainer, and don't forget it." And Rue just heals right into line there.
Well, I mean, it's tricky because you become friends with somebody, and I think that Rue trusts Sareth the same way Sareth trusts Rue. I think Rue probably played a big part in Sareth's recovery from her grief and Sareth's development into a ruler, and it's kind of probably heartbreaking for her to have this woman who's probably like a daughter to her in a lot of ways.
Totally.
Snap back at her and assert, well, no, you may have helped me get here, but that's that. You know, that's done. Now I'm here and you're there.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's
that
tough.
puts a space between them.
And beautifully acted by both these actors. So,
yeah.
All right. Combined scene here. I'm going to squish some stuff together. On Ignis, Josiah brings Salvor some food. She's alive. And we learn that Gale is being brought to the table. Salvor figures out how to use the Prime Radiant to talk to Dr. Selden back on Terminus. In the Prime Radiant, Dr. Selden works out the situation, and Salvor tells him a lot of stuff and implores him to help her. Salvor shows him the dishes back on Ignis, and then they make a plan. Salvor invokes Hober-Mallow's name and then uses the dishes to break out of her cell. So that's a lot there because it all was intercut.
So it was timey-wimey the whole time.
It was way timey-wimey. A passing ghost told me the name, Hober-Mallow.
Yep. That question has been answered. As I heard the check mark be clicked when I saw that scene, because we now know who the passing ghost was.
That's right.
I really like Harry here figuring out, oh, well, why would I withhold this knowledge from the only version of me? Oh my God, I'm not the only version. It really felt genuine. I mean, Jared Harris nailed the scene and figuring out that he is not who he even thinks he is. But it doesn't take 5 episodes for him to do it, right? He doesn't like ponder this for a while. He's a smart guy. We know he's like a genius. He's going to figure this out very quickly once he has a clue.
Fuck, I am the left hand. That was so good. And to hear, there's your common everyday swearing, but it worked in this scene, I think.
I did like this one, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I am the left hand. I didn't
but
want
then
to
he's
be
like,
the left hand.
Oh, but that's really genius. Even though I am the sucker here. Gosh, I'm really smart because I figured this out. But I didn't figure. Yeah, it's brilliant. It just goes around and around. Encephalic sensors, so a little bit more tech. They're dropping lots of little tech. I don't know if it's going to carry forward, but it's nice that there's all these little tech devices out there. And then, you talked about the waveforms canceling each other out. So I thought they visually looked cool too, the way they sort of spun around with the numbers and stuff. Yeah. So
I think so too. And yeah, this did feel real of, you have these waves that can cancel out brain waves. It made sense to me as someone who knows a little bit about that world
Perfect.
of sound waves. And then you have this idea of, well, let's amp things up and let's have it resonate with the rock. I mean, yeah, you can do that if you can make it loud enough.
Which is very Dune. In the 1984 David Lynchian version of Dune, where they invented a thing called the weirding module that allows people to shoot sound waves. So it was
I
a
thought it
nice
was allowing people to post on Reddit.
she who posts or something. I don't know. I can't. Just remember, John, never let your sense of morals prevent you from doing what's right, as
A good
Salvar
line.
says. Yeah.
A very good line.
All right. In Terminus, Director Cermak gets drunk outside the vault and has a conversation with Dr. Selden.
Yeah, I kind of like Cermak more now.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's been very humanized, and I really did not like him at all when we first met him. He seemed very like if he was in Star Wars, he's going to be an Imperial officer, right?
Very much so.
Yeah,
Yeah. Full
yeah,
of himself and feeling like he's got, the world mastered and under his control.
right. But it works here. I think he finally lets down the whole shtick a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just dad, and he's grieving his daughter.
Yeah, nothing like the death of your child to snap you
Right, right.
hard to reality.
I mean, thankfully there is no death, but he doesn't know that yet.
Interesting. In one of Cermak's comments, he refers to mendicants, and I went and looked that up really quick. A mendicant is a religious follower who relies on alms. Basically, they're beggars. They
Okay.
wander around dispensing religious wisdoms and truths, and are supported by the community as they wander around.
Right.
So interesting that he refers to the Church of Selden folks and his daughter, like, please God, don't be a mendicant, don't be one of these, folks kicking around these weird planets. But yet that's what she chose. So
Yeah, especially, you're in a society premised on the superiority of science.
yeah.
And you use these monks as a necessity, as they present it. I'm not sure it actually is a necessity, but they believe these are sort of a necessary evil of,
Mm-hmm.
let's go, pretty this up and sell it. Let's have the marketing team go out.
Right.
But it is kind of gross to dress up your science as religion as a marketing deal, right? Like, just
Yeah.
it's disingenuous. The whole
Mm-hmm.
setup of it is kind of icky, and I think Polly knows that, which is why the High Cleric is on a lot of juice right now.
I think you're exactly right there. He feels that tension, and so he ends up self-medicating to
Right.
try to like get
The
through his
mendicant
days.
medicates, right?
Yes, exactly. Oh, that's a good title for a show. The medicating mendicant. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I think you're 100% right there. It is kind of icky. But yet, how do you sell it? How do you get people to buy in without a little zazz?
Yeah. Something
So,
we didn't find out with the whole Hober Mallow thing, we found out how that got written on the vault. We
yep.
never really saw him decide to smite the the warden.
No. Yeah.
I wonder why that happened. I wonder if there was another reason there that he didn't tell Polly.
Hmm. Yeah. And so,
But
well,
wrath, but I don't know. I don't know.
okay.
That doesn't feel genuine to me.
An open question for you. A lot more of this conversation of history versus the individual and determinism versus free will. So, I mean, like, that's a definite undercurrent of this whole season. And in David Goyer talks about that in our interview, that is definitely what they're playing with. So as we weave in and out, does the individual matter? Or,
Right.
what is psychohistory? And does the individual matter within psychohistory? And if it wasn't going to be this particular person, the historical conditions were correct for another person. It didn't matter the individual. So do we really have free will? And yeah, that's just a lot of trippy concepts to play with there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just have to call something out. One of the little details they have for the vault's religious I can't say it now. Damn it. Um,
Iconography.
Yes, thank you. Iconography. There's these little prime radiant looking things, and with little, multicolored sort of Tibetan style colors, sprouting out of them. It looks like a D20 from role playing games, and they just cut off. They drilled a hole in one end and cut off the other end and stuck some string through it. So
It's
I was like,
almost
that's a
like
D20.
it feels like the Shroud of Turin, right? There's some
Uh-huh.
artifact
Yeah.
that you're like, this proves our whole idea system. This proves our whole way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gone, and we don't know where it is, but we know it exists somewhere. We believe it exists somewhere at least.
Faith and belief.
And so it's interesting to see this kind of, like you say, iconography prop up around the Prime Radiant when we can see it as the viewer, but they haven't seen it in 100 years.
And then the selling of bones. So like that was a thing in part of Europe's past was, oh yes, this was the fingernail of Jesus, or this was St. Peter's, an eyelash from his left eye or whatever.
Perhaps the left thumb. No,
yes.
I'm just playing with Harry's comments.
So, people want a physical manifestation of their faith so that they can believe in that object, right? There's a tangible. All right, another combined scene. Hober and Constant jump into Terminus and try to run dark. They reminisce about Polly and then take a moment for themselves. They try to enjoy a little post-coital bottle of Locre's wine, and then they're apprehended by Empire.
I'm very curious about the motivations of Hober here. He seemed very hesitant here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even to the point that things weren't operational, and Constant was giving him a little, jokes about that.
But Constant, her confidence is unshaken, right? It's not like things weren't operational, so she's like, "Oh, am I
not
pushing you into something here? Is this okay?" She was just like, "No, why wouldn't you want this?" Right. Drops the robe. Why wouldn't you want this?
Yeah. Come on. Let's go.
Which I don't know. I don't know if I liked that from Constant. I think that was a little pressury on Hober there.
Okay. You thought it was a little icky?
I mean, reverse the genders. Is that a good look?
True. Good point. Yeah. Like a little pressurizing. Yeah. I can see
you just strip in front of them and say, "We're doing it."
Right.
I don't think that's a good look.
Okay, I see what you're saying there. You told me earlier on that you felt a little off about something.
I think that's what it was, right? There was the issue of, did Hober really want to do this? I'm not sure. I'm not reading that. I mean, I think in the end he makes his peace with it, but I don't know if that's entirely
is this genuine
kosher.
Affection for her?
Yes.
Yeah, genuinely wanting to get with her, where she's hot on him. And he's just sort of ultimately acquiescing as opposed to having genuine feelings. So, yeah, interesting. Okay. When they're in the ship and they're over Terminus, if you freeze the scene, something that's cool is you can see all of the other fleet, these tiny little black dots all circling around Terminus. So they're sort of showing how massive the Empire's fleet is, which is pretty cool. And then in the last episode, I didn't say anything. This was in my notes, but we were kind of running for time. But I noticed that Hober still had the little dots in his wrist from the Spacer's space cuffs. And so then those come into play in this episode. That's how they were able to track him. So,
yeah, that's fun. The space cuffs. So is that something that they put in? Or was this something that he had? Okay, I was curious if this was like an implant that everybody had. That you know how in Westworld everybody had like the implants of, or a lot of people had the implants of you could take a tab and feel like you're in paradise or whatever. I thought maybe it's that.
Yeah, no, I think these are things that the Spacers physically embedded into Hober's wrists, and when they drop the cuffs on him at one point, we've got to push in. And we showed those things lit up on his wrist. And so, sort of marking them so that when we see it in this scene, we go, oh, that's, there's a
lot of piercings there. She who works at Claire's.
I love these jokes. All right. On Day's shuttle, Day taunts Polly while eating an apple. Polly explains the functioning of the church, and Day hopes that the observer theory is enough to tilt the tides in Empire's favor.
Yeah. So we finally get the line that Marilyn's been waiting for weeks.
Uh-huh.
Violence is the last
Oh, right,
refuge of
yes.
the incompetent. That
Yep,
happens
yep,
here.
yep.
And Polly's pretty confident, honestly, for a guy who is in who's in captivity. I feel like he is I think he's more sure about his beliefs than he ever has been. Right? He finally
Interesting,
feels like
yeah.
things are important. The way he's seen the cruelty of Empire, I think he goes, yeah, okay, there's a reason we made this foundation and it's still there.
Is there some Christian biblical references here in the sense of having a saint or a cleric in this case, sort of standing in front of the not only representative of the
You're going
dominant.
Pontius Pilate kind of deal?
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's some echoes of that. Well,
Maybe.
at the same time, Empire is eating an apple, which is also a religious Christian metaphor of of knowledge. And
They didn't write it. Let's be honest here. But anyway.
I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing in the shadows again.
No,
I
I'm saying it's a Jewish thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. You're fair enough. You're right. You are correct. I apologize. Yes,
that's okay.
I'm off.
So yeah, I mean, it could be. You have Day having the apple of knowledge of life, and I don't know. I can't place the metaphor if it's there. It might just be an apple that he's eating menacingly because he's Lee Pace.
Just little homages, and he's very menacingly eating that apple. But they're just nice. It's just little things sprinkled throughout the episode that make it a richer experience, I guess. In that this, I don't know if you noticed, but Day is all cleaned up and looking shiny, and they left Polly still blown up and bleeding and dirty,
of course
and in tattered robes.
Why would they help him?
Yeah, exactly. I tried to find references to this fable that Day talks about the stone egg that breaks the bowl, but I couldn't find anything on the internet related.
Seems
to
like
that.
a show creation.
Yeah. So if anybody knows of anything, let me know. I'd love to know a little bit more about that.
Watch it be in the Mahabharata. And you just
yes, exactly. Right. The one thing that I really kind of think I know about, it's not there. And Google hasn't indexed, I guess. And then this idea of standing and thinking versus kneeling and praying. There's some definite, playing around in there with religion and science versus science and thinking for yourself as opposed to having somebody else's thought embedded in you, and then you're just following that without thinking about it. Yeah.
It's interesting. Especially when you look at world religions now. Like not every religion kneels when they pray. Some, bow, some stand. There's a whole variety of customs around prayer. So it's this whole standing. I mean, I guess you can read it as Day thinking he's sort of above the whole prayer thing, but I don't know. Has the triple goddesses been passed down the Cleonic line?
It'll be interesting to see if we get triple goddess religion again.
Yeah, we haven't heard about it the whole season, right?
No, yeah.
Feels strange because it felt like a big part of last season.
Yeah, we'll see. I wouldn't put it past Goyer and the writer's room to weave these things across multiple
for
seasons.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and they might not.
You could assume that Day's meddling and sort of corporatizing that planet led the religion to falter.
Which would be interesting.
Read that too. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Dusk and Rue resume their line of inquiry and discover a secret door hidden in the mural. They descend to discover what might be an apparition of Cleon the First, who describes the room as a prison.
Yeah. I think it's Cleon the First. That's what I read it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess maybe he's been around the whole time, or maybe they've cloned him, or
he knows that this is Cleon the 16th. So how does he know that? Right? There's some level of awareness.
Is he a robot? Is he? Well, because we know that they can put the memories of one Cleon into another. So why wouldn't, if you want to do that, why wouldn't you just have Cleon the First memory in everybody?
Yeah.
And then you actually do have an immortal emperor.
And then, well, or if you've got these ocular things all over feeding back into this where you can keep tabs on your exponents,
Yeah,
right?
is this just a grand experiment for Cleon the First?
Mm-hmm.
Demerzel, go make them think that they're in charge.
There. So we've only got 2 episodes left. So episode 9 is going to have to deal with what is this? What prison? Whose prison? What prison? What's going on here? The wizard behind the curtain, who really is playing the tune that we're watching.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm really excited for episode 9. I had texted you after this episode, like, I need to watch episode 9 now because I'm just I'm just blown away.
And nice job too. This was a combined scene with this next scene coming up where we've got Dawn and Sereth, and then Dusk and Rue, and they're sort of editing their 2 stories around each other, and with the reveal of like, oh my God, Demerzel is the power, right? That's it was just a nicely paced and nicely stitched together. Speaking of which, down in the heat sinks, Dawn and Sereth meet and consummate their relationship. They question the nature of the Cleons and realize that Demerzel is the one true heir, the forever Empress.
You get that can opener.
You finally got it. You finally got to use
used the can opeper. And it did look terrible.
It did look terrible, but I'm just glad it was in his flank or his side rather than,
I mean, it seemed like it went down to do its job down there.
Oh, did it like go in? Maybe, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I read it as it's tunneling through his body.
All right,
which
can we
is
just
even worse? No, let's keep talking about it.
You get to ask
going through. Yeah,
yeah.
I did ask him. I did ask David Goyer about it. I was like, "Why is this the most terrifying thing I've ever seen?" And he said he wanted it to be kind of spooky and kind of unpleasant, and maybe they refer to it as this routine, painless thing. But maybe it's not, right? Maybe it is kind of wow.
Yeah. This whole, as I was saying before, this whole weaving of these 2, Dusk and Rue and Dawn and Sereth, and they're figuring it out, was a really nice counter note to Harry figuring out stuff in this same episode. Even though this is spread out over 4 people, Harry's doing a similar thing, but compressed in one guy in just a few moments, where it takes the 4 of them this huge span of time to unpack everything. But at the same time, resonating within the storyline that these 2 mysteries are being unresolved and unpacked. Not unresolved, but being resolved and unpacked. So,
yeah. I'm so excited for the end of the season. I think that it's not that I want it to be over, but I want the answers already.
God, and to find out really what's going on with Demerzel, and that she really is this, secret power that's been in front of us the whole time, not subservient, but actually dominant.
Exactly.
In a passive way. So, all right, Gale wakes up. Let's end the episode. Gale wakes up, bound on the table, surrounded by the sighted. We learn about how Tellum was able to transfer her consciousness into another body, and looks pretty terrifying.
It does, and I didn't see this coming. I did not see a body transfer coming. This is very Sith.
Yeah.
This is a thing that they do in the Legend Star Wars novels. This essence transfer, where you can put your mind into another body, and we know Palpatine. They're going to bring it into canon somehow, because Palpatine basically does that with his clones. That's the whole idea. Is he keeps transferring his consciousness to the clones, and so. It was just something I did not expect to see my Star Wars in my Foundation.
This idea of my ego is so important. I am such a singularity in the world that all y'all can F off, and I'm going to install my consciousness forever, is such hubris, is such, such the height of arrogance and privilege and power that, I'm going to override all y'all, and I'm going to make sure that my ego persists. And we have it in Harry, we have it in Tellum, and we have it in Cleon, which is a nice little trinity right there for us.
Well, I think that Tellum kind of told us right away that she was a problem when she says, don't worship children. It's not good for them.
Right.
Right. Like she knows she's the problem.
Right.
I think
right.
she understands that she is not doing a good thing here.
And she tells us too, I'm afraid of dying. She tells Gale
Right.
that right on
Right.
the beggar. She says, you know, I've got a problem. I'm afraid of dying. Literally.
Right.
And so she keeps herself going.
Yikes.
Don't worry, Gale. You'll die, but I'll always remember you. That's not a quote. That's a paraphrase. But this idea that,
Yeah.
oh, I listened for that little voice for many days, and I always remember her. And don't worry, sweetheart, I'll remember you too. But
Yeah.
you're effed, girl.
So
you're
basically,
gone.
you're imprisoned for years, and then your memory just fades away. How terrible is that?
Terrible. Which is what Day did to the Azora, the gardener from season 1. Like, I've erased the memory of you in the world, but I'm keeping you alive in this prison box, in this, sensory deprivation situation.
Especially, I mean, the only people who might remember Gale here are the Foundation, who think that she killed Harry Seldon.
Right.
That's
not a great memory.
No. But at least she's remembered. I think that's what Dusk would say.
And then we've got now Demerzel, who has perfect memory and remembers all this stuff, right? And she is Tellum in a way, right?
Yep.
Where she persists, but she doesn't have to jump bodies. She's got one body that she can repair. So, really interesting. A couple of other small notes. Interesting, this idea that this whistle is harmless, but in when it's in parts and pieces, when it's brought together, it's this powerful, tool that can cause the consciousness patterns to align.
Yep. Yeah, I did like that a lot. This again, resonating frequencies. You're making a chord that's going to just mess up your mind.
Right. And then we've got these harmonic plates. And do you remember in the Rings of Power, the opening credit sequence was also little particles vibrating on a plate? And these are called Chladni patterns. And this is this guy, I can't remember where Chladni's from. There's a whole Wikipedia article on it. It's spelled Chladni. And it's all about how these waveforms will resonate physically and will create pattern. And so I like how they use that. But it was, again, another Rings of Power reference here.
Well, we do have Bear McCreary doing the music for both.
That's true. God, he'd be a fun person to talk to.
Maybe we will one day. I don't know.
That'd be fun.
Let's try. We'll ask, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Last little detail: the rope that Tellum cuts to then tie them together again. She's cutting it with the USB knife that had Harry, that Raish stabbed Harry with, and then his consciousness was downloaded to.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And then I guess I wonder if I guess you wouldn't have her mentalic powers if she were a digital thing. It was like if Harry could just make her a digital copy and say, just stay there, you'll be fine. Stop taking people over.
That's right. But again, just this cat's paw, it's like the cat's paw dagger from Game of Thrones world, where here's this artifact that just keeps showing up in these key positions and is sort of this, there's a lot. Maybe not so much turning on this knife, but the fact that there's this thing that's tripping through time that we keep seeing is a nice little detail.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that ends the episode.
All right, David, let's take a quick break. And when we get back, we will get into listener feedback. And we're back. David, time for listener feedback.
Sounds good. We got a bunch this time, so keep it coming, y'all. We are heading into our season wrap up. So remember, we'll do one more podcast after the final episode. And that'll be a largely feedback episode. So make sure you send it into empire@thelorehounds.com or hit us up on our website, and you can use the contact form or voicemail. And we can even grab a few things off the Discord. All right. First up is Kim M. she used the contact form. She says, "Hey, Hounds, I'm listening to your pod in episode 7 of Foundation, and a thought struck me. When Demerzel tells Sereth that, to quote, to my knowledge, I am the only one left, is it possible Demerzel could have made more robots? Could Calais be a robot that Demerzel made? Is it possible that Demerzel is following Harry's plan? Thanks. Thanks, Kim. John, thoughts?"
Yeah, I think that leaves wiggle room, but also, I mean, she could lie to Sareth. I mean, she has lied to Sareth before, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's nothing in her programming that would prevent her from doing that. So, yeah, she could have made more. Although I don't know if she would make more or if she would delegate a little bit. Maybe Calais is a robot, right? And maybe Calais is building up the army. Demerzel's keeping Empire in check. And yeah, it's a cool idea.
John, as I realize here too, I just Kim M sent in 3 emails to us, and I didn't realize that, so I'm just going to combine them here really quickly. She's got 2 more things. She says about Hober Mallow and the fact that he sold over 38 of Selden's finger bones after his death. She says, "I'm thinking whoever cloned Harry on Una's world is one of those entities that bought a finger bone or 2? Question mark. And they needed the Prime Radiant so they could download Harry's consciousness into a clone. The more finger bones and parts of Harry that are out there, maybe we'll see more clones of him? Question mark. And it seems like the 2 Harrys found out about Hober at the exact same time, so we kind of resolved that in this episode. Jumping ahead, I can't believe it's almost over either. I've got a few other thoughts about the last episode. I think Glaywin is going to persuade Bell to either fight against Empire or maybe even join Foundation or leave the fight altogether. Perhaps that will persuade the Spacers to join Foundation. Also, if anything happens to Becky, I'm going to be very upset. Remember in
I'm
season
sorry,
1,
Kim. Sorry.
You're upset. Sorry for your upset.
I think I read this email after I watched the new episode, and I was like, "Oh no, Kim!
Oh no, sorry, Kim." Yeah, she says she loved that they turned a really scary monster into something lovable instead, sort of like a big cat with giant shoulder claws. Love Kim. Thanks, Kim. Thanks for all your feedback. Keep it coming. We've got episode 8 and 9 and 10 yet to go. So yeah, what about this idea of can they not jump the shark and still keep Harry around in some sort of physical form beyond just being in the vault, being a digital ghost?
Yeah, so I guess my question with the clone theory is, how does this clone have the memories of the Harry that was digitized if it's a traditional clone? Or really any kind of clone, right? Because just duplicating somebody's DNA does not mean that you can press out a version of them that it looks the same, acts the same, has the same memories as the previous version. So, I mean, I guess that's my pitch for the robot theory, but I also don't know how Harry died. If Harry did die, because I guess we're still not 100% sure of that.
Right.
Because now we were faked out with Salvor, so I'm not completely convinced that this Harry's dead anyway. I think we just have to keep watching. I don't think that we have the answers that we need to answer all these questions, you know?
I'm nervous about this idea of Harry still being alive because I don't want it to be a Glenn crawling out from the dumpster in, Walking Dead situation. Right. How many times can you bring back a character and sort of not jump the shark? Yeah. So it's a very fraught thing. I mean, if he does it, can they pull it off? That's going to be a real test. So, needless to say, I'm a little bit nervous. So,
good question. We at least have Vault Harry, so we won't be without Jared Harris.
Who Vault Harry is very funny too, from the real physical Harry. Yes. He was very funny in this episode. So
he was really good, and he does seem to have, like you say, a different vibe from the other Harry.
All right. Marilyn R. Pukila, our favorite Tolkien scholar, writes in, and she says, "Hello, Lorehounds. Great podcast as always." And she compliments me on my encapsulation of her research that she sent me. So, I started with good input, so the output could be of a better quality. Interesting conversation on choices over what you eat and which creatures suffer. I'm not sure that sharing the suffering is required, though. It seems to me that an acceptance of the reality that life feeds on life can be made with gratitude and equanimity. Suffering need not enter into it. I also feel that any people who can block off their own thoughts from others, read others' thoughts, and block others' thoughts would certainly be able to block off the pain signals coming from anyone else. Tellum certainly seems to be impervious to that pain that people experience when they are drowning. I suspect that she simply chooses not to teach this particular bit of mentalic ability to her followers. John, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, although now I'm convinced that she has, I mean, I'm not convinced, I've been told that she has a lot more power than the average mentalic, because she's many mentalic. She's sort of the Omegatron, right? Of what am I trying to say? The Power Rangers all get together
Megatron,
and they form the big.
Is that right?
No, Megatron is Transformers. So I'm trying to figure. She's the Power Rangers come together and form the big giant guy who faces everybody. That's what we have here in Tellum. And so if you have that, then maybe she can turn things off the way other people can't. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. All right, she continues. I think and hope that Gale's return to counting primes indicates that she's looking for ways to block her mind from interference from the mentalics. I think it's possible that she could be just playing along with Tellum and the others for a time being as she works to boost her own abilities to find out how far she can go. To do this, she had to convince Tellum and the others that she's on their side, while all the time she's trying to figure out how to break free. Given her hatred of Harry's control of her, I really can't see that she would fall into Tellum's plans without a single bit of resistance. Well, certainly being on the table, I think she is does not have the upper hand here in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, also, I don't know if Gale normally would give in right this way, but also she's under the influence of the Mentalic's mental manipulation. She's not herself right now. I think that's fair to say.
Right.
And I think that it is a fair read that she wants approval, right? That's a big part of her motivation.
Her psychological
Tellum
motivation.
Really called her on that. And when Tellum gives her the candy that Harry withheld from her, which is ultimate praise, and you're going to be in charge.
You're special,
you are my prodigy, and yeah, you're special. That is a lot more enticing than Harry going, well, we got a lot of work ahead of us, and we'll have to spend our time figuring out how to best push and nudge the Foundation. Also, Harry has not, nurtured trust from her. Harry has withheld information from her constantly, and made her doubt herself, and made her feel like the villain for just having the ability to see the future a little bit.
Yeah, not trusting her. Yeah,
right.
And that's Harry's MO across the board, even with his own digital copy.
Yeah, so I do think you can make clear distinctions between how she feels about them based on just their behavior towards her.
Right. So, John, I'm not alone in my prison of thinking that Markley.
Oh my God!
Was.
You know what? I thought it was a wrong idea from the beginning. And now I literally have David Goyer as evidence that it's not correct.
In the most hilarious way. Marilyn says, I agree with David. Markley may very well be one of the cited from Ignis. I have to think that Tellum has agents on Trantor. And how else did Markley hide his work for Sereth so well, given his regular memory audits? I'm not sure that Dominion could have learned that much from Rue's experience to be able to audit memories without leaving a trace. And speaking of Rue, I'm rather afraid that she's become very vulnerable given her knowledge that Demerzel is a robot, not to mention Sarah's increasingly risky maneuvers. She may well come under threat from Day in order to control Sarah's behavior. Well, in this episode, Sarah certainly comes to Day's side and bolsters him rather than undercuts him.
Well, she bolsters him in a way that was very political. I think was very. I'm going to make you feel good right now, so that while you're hot and heavy, you go do something stupid. Right.
You go. Yes, darling. You go off planet, and while I get with your younger clone.
What a big, strong man. You are,
Oh, you're going to bring me a planet for my wedding gift? Oh, great. Yeah. So, she's playing a very dangerous game, but she is.
She's playing it well.
She's playing it well, considering her age and her experience. Yeah. So she's doing good. And yes, wah, pour one out for Markley in my theory. Thanks for trying to ride with me there, Marilyn. I appreciate that. A couple more things she has. Another faith belief distinction. You believe the plane can fly. You have faith that the pilot is well trained. The technicians have all been careful and that the plane has recently tuned into tip-top shape. The phrase, blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. She says not a word for word quotation, but it comes from the book of John, chapter 29. Jesus says this to the doubting Thomases as a rebuke when he appears after his resurrection, just so that Thomas can touch his body and then believe in the resurrection. Thomas requires experiential knowledge to bring in the third piece of my discussion about this rather than anyone else's say so. So yeah, this idea of needing a physical object to root your belief in something. Root your faith.
Yeah. I buy that. I mean, you have Polly, who actually saw the Prime Meridian, right? And saw the events of the first crisis and saw the way the Vault behaved before Zeldin came out the first time. That's a lot different from Constant, who takes everything at the word of her elders.
Right. All right, she concludes, I have to say the quality of this show is giving all other shows a real run for their money. I'm going to be spoiled for anything of lesser quality from now on. And your podcast is the finest of any of the Foundation ones that I've heard, although I do recognize my own bias in the matter. Thanks, Marilyn.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a totally fair review, you know?
Yeah.
They're not going to let you write that one on the New York Times.
John, last episode, we missed a voicemail from Brian 8063. Brian, apologies for that. Sorry. Vacation scheduling, and all that kind of stuff. But we have it here. So John, you want to cue that up?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, John and David. I don't know if this will play a little while later, but David, I hope you had a relaxing vacation.
I did. Thank you,
Great
Brian.
insights on the podcast for Foundation. Thank you both for that. I'm interested in the church/religious component of the Foundation. I read a couple of the books many years ago, so I don't remember much of anything. John, you mentioned the Crusades in a previous podcast, and I was thinking the same thing. Then Harry mentioned that the church is probably a phase. I think this ties into Asimov himself. From what I've learned, he was an atheist and Jewish. He was not a practicing Jew, so like Harry, I bet he did not think much of practicing religion. So the show might be a reflection here. Because Asimov might be suspicious of a church, society will evolve out of it. The church in this show reminds me of the church in the Middle Ages, where relics were sold, clerics stood between the people and God, and played a major social and political role in society. However, this Foundation church seems to have a weaker political hold, and the clerics seem to have fewer rituals. What I mean by that is that the people don't go to a church or listen to clerics talk at length about God in a regular fashion. It's more of a show, and I'm not sure when or how often this show is done. I could see this church collapse as I don't see deep roots being planted. Maybe it's not examined in the show, which is why I feel this way. Anyway, this season is better than season 1. In my opinion, the Empire storyline, my favorite, is improving with all the political intrigues and genetics, and I'm also coming around to the Harry, Gale, Salvor storyline as the plot gets more twists. I wasn't invested in that storyline in season 1. I found it kind of confusing, but it's gaining importance to the overall show. Thanks again, and cheers to everything you do. Brian 8063.
Thanks, Brian. Always great stuff when Brian writes in, who he himself is a bit of a historian, I believe, in his profession. I think we even talked with Goyer a little bit about season 1, and he conceded the fact that, look, we just had to lay a lot of track, and sometimes that's not easy to do from a entertainment storytelling standpoint. We just got to set up structures, and that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. It's how do you tell a story without establishing the world, right? We spend a lot of
Right.
time setting up the Shire and Frodo and everybody in the Lord of the Rings, and that's fine. It's because you have the trilogy, which he would have called one book, to set up, to get through that whole story. And here we had to get through what is the Clone Dynasty just to get to the point where you can play with that, and you can't play with something you haven't established.
And Gale and Salvor and Harry and all that, and even so, and we there's obviously a lot of known about how COVID really threw a wrench into the works for them, and how that created some difficulties. And
Right.
I agree that I believe the actors are have grown into their roles, and I feel like the writers' room and the directors and the directing, all of that is really ticking along now. It's really humming, and if we have this quality for the rest of the run, however long they get, it's going to be a really, it's going to go on the shelf, on the top shelf, as one of the better television science fiction shows that we've had in a long time.
Absolutely. I really hope that we can stay at this quality level this whole run.
And regarding relics and the Middle Age, the church in Europe, the Christian church in the Middle Ages in Europe, I believe that's all overt on on the writer's part to say, this is what we were modeling this off of.
Definitely.
All right. Last up, Duve71. Duve says, "Hey guys, blimey, this show just gets better and better. Just did not see Salvor being the necessary death, but of course it makes perfect sense. Not too much feedback this week as the second hour pod you pulled this week. Geez, you must have really great spouses." Yeah,
we do.
We do. And we have to make sure that we balance our life versus podcasting. So,
yep.
Anyway, a little late with the episode to watch the pod listen, blah, blah, blah. Skipping some stuff here. Such great writing, directing, and acting in this episode, especially with the Sereth Demerzel Empire Triangle. The tension in the Zen Garden scene was palpable, which then ramped up in the medical scene. Like you, I loved the slight bit of humor to puncture what was not only a tense scene, but a deeply uncomfortable one. I can't believe that having all those minions in the room wasn't a conscious setup by Demerzel to be exactly that uncomfortable and invasive as part of the power plays going on here.
Yeah, definitely.
To that end, that scene with Demerzel just laying out the horrendous truth was a double violation for Sereth. Phew, harsh to watch. Agreed. And beautiful acting and really great writing all around.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts were how Bell is talking out loud about why it would not be a great move to side with Foundation against the Empire. Methinks he doth protest. Yeah, boy, it's getting to the end of the podcast. Methinks he doth protest too much. What could make him take a step he obviously would like to do? ? That's a good question. We didn't really talk about that too much too. When he sort of walks through the logic of, well, look, if I did this, then what? If I did that, then what? Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see Bell wrestling with these issues and to see what his ultimate choices might be, because there's stakes involved, right? There's space. He's obviously got a good relationship with Spacers. Right. They've developed that all season long. He's joking with them. He respects them. They respect him.
She who pity laughs. Yep.
He's respected by his troops. So if he made a move and broke his oath to Empire, or if he could find some sort of legalese way to, get around that, we'll see. I think it's a really interesting question. And I think it very much goes into this question of what the story of the Mahabharata is. A big chunk of it is about, which is following your Dharma, which is the path that's for you based on who you are and what your values and beliefs are. And so, again, it's another really great dimension. Carries on. I like David's theory on the guard being a mentalic spy. Anything is possible at this point.
You're creating an army of Markleys.
That's right. I had 2 supporters. I'm sorry for everyone who followed me down this path, but hey, That's what this is, the fun stuff of the podcasting, right?
You're leading them all down through the staircase to the mysterious Markley cave.
He who what? He who what's?
He who rabbit holes.
There you go. That works. With the death of Salvor just now, just not sure where we're going to go next, which I love. It's great to have a show that's willing to confound expectations, but give you conclusions to draw some of these conundrums that actually make sense. The only one really still giving me an itch is the whole hologram Harry to human. Is he actually dead? Perhaps just shut down? We know predictions and patterns are Harry's superpowers, so I can't believe he would not have foreseen the whole Mentalics need to take him and Salvor off the board to realize Gale as their messiah. Yeah, there's got to be more going on here with this. There's something.
Yeah, I don't trust my own eyes, just like the Mentalics at this point.
Nor should we. Is David Goyer our Tellum in this fantasy world?
He might be Tellum, but he was much nicer than Tellum.
Much nicer, yeah. That's his magic power. All right, Duve concludes, we saw in season 1 the power of psychohistory and how Harry's predictive powers accounted for pretty much all things apart from Gale, obviously, whereas we seem to be getting shown how the model is going wildly off course. Or is it? Only 3 episodes left. Eek. Enjoy the Empire's Peace. Stu, a.k.a. Duve71. Thanks, Duve. Always good to hear from you. Yeah. So 2 left now. And yeah, I think that's a big question. Is the Spacers not siding with Foundation a strategic blunder or a strategic success? Was this all a setup to push Empire into overextending themselves and push them into a trap?
I think that it would be very satisfying if the Spacers did go with Hobart in the end, because that's a good deal for them, and it would be a satisfying moment if they kind of had their whole Entmoot. You remember the Entmoot in
right,
right,
and they
go, okay, all right, we've had our discussion, and now we're ready to go and fight on the side of the Foundation.
Is that where they got the oxen moot from?
Maybe it is.
Yeah,
maybe it is.
I never understood
where
a moot. Yeah, no, that's a good question. We've got not a lot of runway left for this season, so. All right, John, I think that wraps it up for us today.
I think so.
Yeah, we are enjoying the show. Can't wait for episode 9. Check out the Goyer interview as soon as that drops. Patrons should be getting it shortly, and the public will be getting what you said. We're going to try and get it out for Sunday.
I think Sunday.
Awesome. Cool.
All right. David, it's been fun, but we have a couple more things to get through. Just our programming notes and our.
I was ready to sign off. I thought we were done.
Yeah, sorry. I've ruined your vibe here. I've harshed your vibe. Right.
So, yes, programming notes.
I was going to tell you all about our affiliates.
Please do so. I always like to hear about our affiliates.
We've got Will Shift Dust, and it's going strong with Dune. Elysia is working on updating her schedule to account for the moving of the Dune Part 2 movie premiere. But once she has that figured out, she's going to start posting again. And she and Luke will be breaking down the Dune series from the books to the would-be movies to the movies that actually happened to the video game. So you will see the culture of Dune. She'll be going through all that. It's going to be some great conversations. She's already released her preview pod, so I hope you'll check out her feed for that. Anthony is over on Properly Howard Movie Review with his friend Steve, and the two of them are breaking down remakes all season. And when I say breakdown, it's not like a scene-by-scene breakdown like we do. I think more using them as punching bags a lot of the time, which is fun. It's really fun. It's they make fun of it. They talk about what they like. They talk about what they didn't like. And in the end, they decide if it's better, worse, or on par with your average Ron Howard movie. And I love that framework. We were on their Dune podcast. They just did RoboCop. They're about to do the Wolfman and the Wicker Man. They got plenty of stuff coming. They pitched the sequel to Cocaine Bear on the RoboCop podcast. So it's not like
good.
you have to be hyper-focused on this movie that they're talking about. They can just talk about anything on the podcast. And it's like you put it on in the car. It's like taking a road trip with your friends who are very funny.
I think that's a really important point too, is that you don't have to watch the movie that they're talking about to enjoy the podcast, because they talk about, do sequels work? How do they work? They talk a lot about cultural references. It's a really wide ranging discussion. So don't feel locked in just because it's a movie you haven't seen or might never see.
Yeah.
Because it's a much broader conversation. All right. And for us, it's just Foundation, Ahsoka, and Wheel of Time. Wheel of Time.
That's what we're living in. Yep.
Just dropped this morning, John. You pushed out. Thank you so much. I mean, queuing all of those episodes to drop all ahead. We got screeners for those, so we're ahead of the curve. I just watched
3 episodes out. Yep.
Right. I just watched 4 last night. So yeah, we're going to be rolling with that and Ahsoka at the same time. So that's really our big focus for the moment.
We're allowed to give our general impressions now, and I gotta say, Wheel of Time Season 2 is great. It is much, much better than Season 1. So if you were kind of out on it after Season 1, which I a little bit was, like I was having a hard time with it after Season 1, it's much better. They're really doing a much better job, and I think part of that is they don't have COVID restrictions. They have sort of found their footing on what they're doing, and it is a pleasure to watch. I look forward to it every time I can watch an episode. We've seen the first half of the season. We may get screeners for the second half. We're not totally sure yet. But it's such a great season so far, and I hope you'll join us for our 6 hours of discussion that just dropped.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we decided we would do individual episodes because we did get access to screeners, so that as you watch it, you can take your own time and catch up with the pods being there, because it is a lot of content to watch, let alone listen to. But
it is.
I think, and I addressed this in one of the episodes, like if you're fantasy adjacent or you're in fantasy and sci-fi, but you haven't read this stuff, definitely, use the pod, because I think we try to make sense of a lot of it, because there's a lot going on in this season if you're not caught up. So yeah, lean on us. We got you.
Absolutely. And with Ahsoka, we're just having a good time with our cereal. So join us, grab your pajamas, and let's keep going down the Star Wars pipeline, I guess.
Definitely. Okay, John, we should get the heck out of here. But before we do that, we do have to thank our Patreon Lore Master subscribers and all our Patreon subscribers. Thank you, everyone. We're closing in on 100 subscribers. It's hard to believe. It's such a small number in some ways, but it's such a huge number. I think all these people, their hearts are bigger than their feet. Ha, ha, ha. And we always like to say thank you so much for your support. To our lore masters, Samartian, Cyrus, Mark H., Michael G., Michelle E., David W., Brian P., Nick W., SC, Peter O.H., Bettina W., Adam S., Nancy M., Lavinia T., Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H., Sarah L., Gareth C., Eric F., Matthew M., Sarah M., DJ Miwa, Andra B., Kwang Yu, Laura G., Deadeye, Jedi Bob, Nathan T., and Alex V. Our gratitude forever. Thank you so very much. And thank you to all our subscribers. We really do appreciate you a lot. You guys help keep us on, we've got lots of things that we have to keep track of, and we couldn't do all of that without your material support.
So thanks everyone, and we'll see you on the Goyer interview. The Lorehounds podcast is produced and published by the Lorehounds. You can send questions and feedback and voicemails at thelorehounds.com/contact. Get early and ad-free access to all Lorehounds podcasts at patreon.com/thelorehounds. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thanks for listening.